For today's presentation, I picked two verses from the 6th chapter in the Gita. The 6th chapter in the Gita is also called Dhyana Yoga. Dhyana Yoga because in this chapter, Krishna explains about meditation. The chapter also talks about reflection and introspection. Dhyana Yoga is also called Atma Samyama Yoga because it talks about mind control, talks about concentration and focus. So it's also called Atma Samyama Yoga. In this chapter, Krishna talks about how to do meditation and what would be the benefits of doing meditation. So to make that point, I've selected 26 and 27. 26 goes, Yato yato nischarati manaschanchalamastheram tatas tato niyamyaitat atmaneva vashyam nayet. Krishna says, whenever the restless and unsteady mind goes wandering for whatever reason, bring it back under the sway of the self alone. He's teaching how to change from mindlessness behavior to mindful behavior, meditative behavior. He calls the mind restless and unsteady. Mind is restless because it jumps from one thought to the other constantly. And it's unsteady because it cannot concentrate on any one idea or on any one thought for too long. It keeps, changing. So it's not stira, it's asthira. And bringing back this moving mind, which is wavering, which is fickle, bringing it back is called meditation. There is a reason for this wandering. There is a protective mechanism, people think, because if we don't have mind wandering, you might have experienced situations where a song stuck in your head. You just can't seem to get it out of your head. Or there could be incidents where you might have had traumatic experiences. Somebody insulted you or something is lost and you get stuck on that idea. And the capacity to waver, the capacity to move around helps us not to be stuck in one point. It also has a quality to learn new things. When we are not stuck on one area, we can learn new things. So there seems to be some purpose to this. And there also seems to be some reason when we are wandering. It may not be a logical reason. For example, say we look at the lights and it could remind us about Diwali when we were growing up. And then next thing we know, we can think about the children we played with, had the firecrackers with, going to their yard, having a guava tree there, climbing up the guava tree, seeing a monkey on it. I mean, it goes on and on, keeps jumping from one to the other. And usually on a day-to-day basis, what does go on in this mind that's churning constantly? Old or new ideas. And there is this audio-visual that goes on in our head. Constantly there are conversations, arguments, and movies almost keep going. We play them again and again in our head and get even more restless about it. There appears to be two reasons for this. Usually, it could be likes and dislikes, also known as desires. We want things to happen certain way or things not to happen certain ways. Attraction or aversion. And there is constant hankering that goes on in the head. The other reason that this restlessness goes on is because of the memories of the past. It could be involving people, places, possessions. It could be about job, variety of things. It could be about the past, or it could be about worries of the future. So typically these are the reasons why there is so much restlessness that goes on in the head. When it comes to the desires, Krishna says, deal with it with karma yoga. Karma yoga is where we are doing things, and it is bahiranga sadhana. We are continuing to do things. However, he says, do them with a different frame of mind. And what is the different frame of mind? One, to develop what's known as prasada buddhi. Prasada buddhi is to be grateful for whatever comes our way, receiving everything that comes our way as a blessing, to develop that attitude of gratitude. Second point he talks about is to have daiva arpana buddhi, means whatever we are doing, do it as an offering, do it as a worship. Those two things, doing them with changing the frame of mind, that's karma yoga. Not just doing, that's karma kanda. Karma yoga is changing with a different frame of mind. So that's what he talks about when it comes to likes and dislikes. Raga and dvesha, they are called. But when it comes to the baggage we carry inside, Krishna recommends that we follow dhyana yoga, working on the mind alone. It's an antaranga sadhana, inside changing. That's what this chapter talks about, meditation. It's like exercising our mind. It's like trying to get our mind so we can help it control itself and to regulate itself. So constantly bringing it back. Now, there are times when we are able to not think about the past, not think about the future, and be just in the present, even when we are not meditating. For example, when we are reading a book, watching a movie, we are so engrossed in it, we don't think about past or future. But that is doing things. It's not a transcending type of experience. It's not evolution type of experience. It's just that it takes our attention from one point to the other. So that's what that is about. Whereas meditation is not about doing things. It's about being. Doing, when we are doing, there are 3 types of karmas doing that the Gita talks about. We do things with our body, we do things saying words and thoughts. All these 3 things are considered doing, actions. And taking a break from these actions and going deep inside is what meditation is about. It's not about doing. There are many, many types of meditation, and Krishna describes about meditation extensively in this chapter. So he said, bring it back. And before you try to bring back this mind from wandering, what should one do? And Krishna describes that. 6th chapter, 11th verse, he says, Shuchau deshe pratisthapya stiramasana matmanaha natyuchritam natinicham chailajina kushotaram. He says, establish a firm seat for oneself and in a clean spot, not too high, not too low, made out of a cloth, antelope skin, and kusha grass. This is what he describes. Not too high, because many times when we are meditating, we might relax so much we may fall asleep. So we should make sure that we don't sit too high and fall down, and not too low, to be comfortable. In other words, he's talking about be comfortable before you start meditating. Make yourself comfortable in a clean spot, conducive to sitting. And when you're sitting, he says about the materials that were available at that time. Antelope skin is supposed to reduce dampness, and antiseptic. Cloth absorbs sweat. In India it was very warm most of the time. So he describes materials that were available at that time to be comfortable, cushioning, sit down. Sitting is symbolic of mental sitting. Buddhists call this sitting, because we sit so that we can rest our mind. Before we can rest our mind, we can rest our body to begin with. So that's what Krishna talks about. Simple stretching before meditation can also increase the comfort level. And some people would like to have rituals like a little incense to get them in the mood. The times that the scriptures recommend are morning and evening, from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. are called sattvic times. That's when the mind is more conducive to this type of training. So those would be some of the things. In addition, Krishna says, 6th chapter, 13th verse, Samankaya shiro grivam dharayanna achalam stiraha samprekshanasikāgram svam dishascha-navalokayan. He says, let the person firmly hold his body, his head, his neck erect, and still gazing as though at the tip of the nose, without looking around. He's talking about sitting erect while you're meditating, because when you sit erect, you would have less chance of falling asleep. There's nothing wrong in falling asleep, but it doesn't achieve what you're trying to achieve. Sleeping is only helping you to relax. Besides relaxation, we're talking about transcending from inside. So sit erect so you won't fall asleep. And he says, keep your face as though you're looking, your eyes as though you're looking at the tip of the nose. What does that mean? That means you're not looking around, you're not distracted, because you want to concentrate on being in a meditative mode. That means when you try to look at the tip of your nose, your eyes would be half shut, not completely shut. If you shut them completely, you can go to sleep. So Krishna says, don't shut them completely, just close them halfway so that you're not distracted. If you notice, like wandering eyes indicate state of mind, restlessness, you're looking around, that is restlessness. To be restful, try not to look around and keep your eyes half shut. And sitting, lotus position would be comfortable. If you cannot sit on the floor, you can sit on a seat. But if you want to use the Jnana Mudra, that would be good, to keep your hands up, receiving knowledge, and keeping the index and thumb finger together. That indicates oneness, the Jivatma and Paramatma together, and indicates the separation of the body, mind and Indriyas. They are not what we are. We are souls with the body. So this would be the position that is encouraged. Some people also encourage sitting with the palms, cradled one on the top of the other, touching the thumbs. Whatever works for you, use that is conducive. And another thing that Krishna talks about in the Gita is, before he goes to the next chapter, he gives introduction to that chapter before he ends this chapter. For example, at the end of the 5th chapter, he gives a little glimpse of what is to come in the 6th chapter. So before he goes to the 6th chapter, in the 5th chapter, he says, Sparshan krutva bahirbahyan. This is 5th chapter 27. Chakshas chaivantare bhruvoho pranapano samo krutva nasabhyantara charinav. He says, avoiding, shutting out all the external contacts, that is sense perceptions, and fixing the gaze as though between the eyebrows, between the eyebrows, and equalizing breathing, inhalation and exhalation. Now he said sit in a quiet place. Again, before going to the meditation explanation extensively, he already says sit in a quiet place to reduce distractions, to reduce interruptions. And he says you can also concentrate on the point between the eyebrows. Accomplishes the same whether you're trying to look at the tip of the nose or trying to look at the point between the brows, which is the third eye position, increases concentration, accomplishes the same. Your eyes are half shut, reducing the external distractions, yet you're not completely closed and falling asleep. And the important point also here, he says, pay attention to your breathing. Equalize it. Take deep breath. Regular, deep, comfortable breath. Inhalation and exhalation. And deep breath would be abdominal breathing. How do you know you're doing abdominal breathing? Lie down if you want to check if you're doing it or not. Put a book or some object on your tummy. Take a deep breath. If the book rises when you're taking a deep breath, that means you're doing abdominal deep breathing. If it is not, that means you have to practice until you push the book up and it goes up and down, goes up and falls down. And why is breathing important? Breathing helps you to be in the present the best way. When you are concentrating on the breath, there is no past, which is said and gone. There is no future, which is just an idea in your head, which may or may not take place, and you would be able to concentrate right now, just in the present. So that's why breathing is so important. In addition to breathing, if you can add smile, that would be a bonus. Okay, and the Buddhists call it mouth yoga. Okay, so add smile because it adds to the conduciveness. However, when you are smiling, make sure your mouth is closed because otherwise you can experience dryness. And some people have more problem with salivation, more saliva during this process, and it is recommended that the tip of the tongue can be touching the palate, gently pushing the palate in that position. It would help reduce saliva. So what happens when we are meditating? First the body starts relaxing, and that's why I said earlier we can fall asleep. It relaxes and it starts reducing the blood pressure, it starts reducing the heart rate, it starts reducing the aches and pains. So there are so many health benefits also while we are trying to do that. And then the mind starts quietening. And then what happens as the mind is quietening is that you can start observing your thoughts. Typically, we are absorbed in our thoughts. We identify so much with our body and mind, we get caught up in these thoughts. But when the mind relaxes, you are able to observe what's going on in the head. And the breathing can get deeper and deeper, and it increases our focus, our concentration more and more and more. And we can become more attentive, more mindful as this is going on. And the breathing exercises is something that you can do not only at a designated time. Meditation is having a designated time, but you can be meditative, mindful throughout the day, and try to do this breathing. Take a deep breath and smile whenever you can think about. It could be you're waiting at a red light to change. It doesn't have to be in a special time. It could be a commercial. if you're still watching TV the old way with commercials. And it could be phone rings. Most of us carry cell phones now. Every time it rings, take some deep breath before you answer your phone, and smile. And you make your own association. You make your own method of getting into this practice, to take a breath, to become meditative, to become mindful. Why does Krishna say do my meditation? So you can extend this concept throughout the day. Okay, so that would be what you can think about breathing. And then Krishna says, what happens? What is the purpose of all of this practice? Again in 6th chapter 12 he says, Tatraikagram manah krutva yata chittendriya kriyaha upavishyasane yunjat yogamatma vishuddhaye. He says, there having made the mind one-pointed, concentrating, focusing, controlling the mind and senses, not forcefully, but trying to observe what's going on and trying to gently course the mind. And seated on this seat, let him practice yoga for the purification of the self itself, mind itself. So that's the purpose of it, to be able to clear all this clutter we carry in the mind. Okay, so this is a way to get into that mode. And when we are trying to meditate, many obstacles happen, and these obstacles can be sattvic type, rajasic type, and tamasic type. Tamasic is the most common one, one of the most common ones, falling asleep. Okay, and again, as I said, if it helps you to sleep, do it, but that is not our goal. That is all. If one wants, that's fine, but we want to go beyond that. And the most common distractions are rajasic type. What happens is we are trying to concentrate, and then suddenly ideas come, distractions. They are called vikshepa or kashaya. Vikshepa is just, we're trying to meditate, all sorts of ideas come to the head. We can think about what happened 10 years ago in a particular party, or the appointment we have with the doctor next day. It goes on and on. But kashaya type of distractions can also happen. Negative feelings, emotions, sadness, guilt, those kind of things can also well up. And again, when they well up, we would be able to, if we are able to slowly look at this when we get into the meditative mode, we would be able to observe them instead of getting absorbed in them and getting emotional. Realize this is what is going on in my head, and I need to work on getting my mind cleaned up. The other thing, that sattvic type of distraction can also happen when people start enjoying it. It's like another relaxation technique or a pleasurable technique. Again, nothing wrong with it, but it's limiting. It's not all you want to have when you are meditating. So whenever the mind goes away, you want to develop your own technique. Some people use a mantra. Mantra is instrument of the head. Some people use japa. Some people use some kind of color or whatever works for you. Try to gently, word of God, Om, whichever works for you, use that to bring your mind back. And as you would be able to rest your mind, you would be able to get what? Self-purification, because meditation calms down and it helps us to look at ourselves in a better fashion. Okay, not critically, but observing more and more. Understanding the baggage we are carrying on in the head, to re-evaluate, re-understand, and re-examine our habits, our values, our thoughts, our behaviors, our beliefs. So helps us to become more self-aware of what's going on in the head and be able to re-establish more productive, more helpful, new ways of and methods of being rather than being the old self. It's like letting the past go so a new us or new you, new me is born. The analogy the scriptures use is the seed has to die for the plant to come out. The flower has to die for the seed to form. You see, the past which is not helpful, we need to let it go so the new in a person we have inside we can discover and we can go deeper and deeper. Why? Because that is how we can connect with this peace, with this joy we have inside. Even after a long time, still distractions happen and we need to continue to keep practicing and trying to learn to be less and less emotional about these distractions, especially when the vikshepa type of rajasic type of distractions happen. And there are many types of meditation. Pick and choose, try and see which one you can stick with. And there could be breathing, easiest, best, simple, anytime can be breathing exercises, concentration on the breathing, using a particular mantra, using a particular japa. Some people use music for meditation. Some people use the chakras, colors for meditation. And guided meditation, if all that is difficult for you, there are many programs available online. Now you can listen to it in a passive way. It's more like you're using something to help you be channeled into that mode. So why is all this important? Krishna says, summarizes in the 27th verse. He recommends us to try and practice all this because he says, Prashanta manasam henam yoginam sukham uttamam upaiti shanta rajasam brahma bhutam akalmasham. He says, supreme bliss, highest bliss comes to this person who's able to do this, whose mind is peaceful. Only a peaceful mind can have bliss. Freed from all these impurities, all these agitations, whose passions are quietened and has become one with one's self. Brahman, that is Brahman. Okay? And it is like we are trying to take an analogy of, again the scriptures talk about a bowl of muddied water, a container of muddied water. It won't be able to reflect the sun, but you let it sit there, settle, the dirt goes down, the clear water comes up, and the sun can reflect in that water. That's what you're trying to do. All this muddied, head we have, it covers up the brightness, the bliss, the joy we have inside. And when we are able to let it settle and clean all that muddiness around it, we can see what a bright spot we have within ourselves. So all we are trying to do is finally look everywhere and finally try to find it within ourselves. Patanjali, the one who wrote Yoga Sutras, the oldest text in yoga, he describes meditation like this. He says, meditation is the progressive quietening of the mind till it reaches its source of thought, okay? In pure silence, pure awareness. It's beyond thought, beyond cognition. It's pure silence. And in the 10th chapter, Krishna talks about maunam chaivasmi guhyanam. Of all the secrets, I am nothing but the silence. That's where you want to go. Now, we don't know if we would be able to reach that state of ultimate bliss, but we can try. While trying, practically speaking, if we can develop a checkpoint, which would be Atma Samyama, which is taking just a moment before we say something, before we do something, before we think about something or thoughts are coming, if we take a moment and say, is this what I want to think about? Is this what I want to say? Is this what I want to do? You know, rather than acting on the emotion, rather than reacting, being reflective. If you can work on, if we can work on that, that would be the beginning of this never-ending journey that Krishna is talking about. I would like to conclude with a saying from Swami Vivekananda. He says, mind is not a dustbin to keep anger, hatred, and jealousy, but it is a treasure box to keep love, happiness, and sweet memories. And that's my presentation.